Welcome to the Wired for Success podcast, your show for ambitious, mission-driven entrepreneurs who understand that there's more to entrepreneurship than finding the latest flash-in-the-pan strategies, who understand that in order to build your empire, you need a solid foundation. I wholeheartedly believe that entrepreneurship is the biggest self-development journey you can be on, and it's my mission to help you make that journey easier. In this show, I bring together the very best from science, self-development, and entrepreneurship to set you up for sustainable success. Hi, I'm Claudia Garbutt, the scientist and mindset coach behind this show, and you're listening to the Wired for Success podcast. Hey everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the Wired for Success podcast, where we talk about all things science, self-development, and entrepreneurship that help you get to that next level of success in your life and business. And today I'm bringing you another brand new interview episode. My guest today is Nathan Stuck, and he's an award-winning leader in the B-corp community. In addition to his role as the Director of Corporate Culture and Strategic Impact at Ad Victoriam Solution, a certified B-corp, he also founded and runs Be Local Georgia, a nonprofit dedicated to growing the number of purpose-driven businesses in the Peach State. Nathan also teaches an MBA course on B-corps at the University of Georgia and is the CEO of Profitable Purpose Consulting, which helps for-profit businesses certify as B-corps. He's all about helping his students find their path to purpose, building diverse, inclusive, and winning cultures, and inspiring executives to bring their business into the 21st century. So this totally resonates with me, and I'm looking forward to our conversation today. So welcome, Nathan, and thank you so much for being on my show today.
Thanks for having me. I don't know if you saw me laughing there, where I'm like, sometimes I'm still blown away. I'm like, how many different things do I do?
Yeah, you seem to do a lot.
That's why I'm so tired. Okay.
There you go. Now, why are culture, purpose, and impact topics that are so close to your heart? And how have they influenced your life journey so far?
So without going full into the backstory, like the first 10 years of my career, like I was an undergrad, like my first university diploma was business. And then I went into the business world, and the first, 7-8 years weren't bad. The last 2 were pretty rough on my perception of capitalism. I kind of lost faith, and it just was it was growing very icky. And also, you go through, I was 3 or 4 years out of college when the Great Recession hit, and that was just all corporate greed. That was all capitalism without rules. So all of that just kind of like, by the time I got ready to go back to get my MBA, I had just completely soured on the concept of capitalism and business. And honestly, it's funny, I was torn between going back and just getting a master's in German and just teaching, or getting an MBA. And my old German professor asked me if I wanted to teach. I said, not really. And then he said, he's also, do you want to like make a lot of money in your life? I said, I don't need a lot, but a little would be nice. He goes, okay, go get your MBA. So I ended up getting my MBA, and my first semester, I guess end of my first semester, there was an email that came out about a B Corp project, and that Ad Victoriam Solution, who I'd never heard of, wanted to become a B Corp, which I'd never heard of. But it was sent out to like the Net Impact Student Club. And I was like, I don't know what this is, but I'm going to go check it out. And I got there and I was like, as we started doing our research, because we agreed to do the project, I don't know that we still fully understood what it meant. And as we started digging into it and getting into the actual assessment, I was like, this is capitalism. This is capitalism with some rules and some ethics and some values. You're still getting paid for the value you bring to the marketplace. We're still getting paid for the value our products and our services bring to the marketplace, but we're doing it in a way where we're not like stepping on our people. We're not taking advantage of anybody. We're not polluting. We're sleeping well at night, and we're making money, and we're providing really good jobs that pay well, that have good benefits. Like, it's everything that capitalism is meant to be, that I was taught it was. And from then on, it's been my life's work, because I love it. And honestly, capitalism takes a hit a lot of times, but I have family in the old East Germany, like that didn't work. Like there's a semblance of like, this is the best system we have, but without rules, it opens itself up for, which we could get like a sociologist or something to talk about it, but it opens it up to the worst parts of mankind. And that's what I think we've seen. And that's what's kind of perverted the term. But that's where my passion comes from, is just personal experience. And then kind of getting in and realizing that like, I can be a force for good in the business world where I love, and I think I add the most value, and I think I can make the most change. So I've just kind of just taken off and run with it.
That sounds amazing. Sounds like capitalism at its best, like having an impact and still making a living, because we all have to live. We all have to make some money, but if we can do good at the same time, I mean, that's the ideal thing, right? So yeah. As a purpose-driven person, do you have some sort of mission statement for yourself? So how do you define your life purpose?
Man, there's so many, because I wear different hats. I would say it all boils down to, and I have to credit Christina Noel, who's kind of like one of my mentors she's up in North Carolina. And she did her MBA at Georgia. She was at the first meeting because she had worked I think she interned for the nonprofit B Lab. So she came down to kind of explain it. And then she's just been my mentor ever since. And I'm stealing her life's mission, but to create jobs that don't suck. Like, I don't know how much more succinctly I can put it, but between my work at, helping companies certify, my work with students, teaching the class, and then I volunteer. Like, I basically am the champion or knowledge subject matter expert, where like we're rolling these projects out to different universities. I'm kind of the guy they have to email. I want people to be able to graduate with with whatever degree and enter the business world and not find something that is the way that I found it in the early 2000s. It is the way that, you owe a debt to the company, and you work for the company, and you owe them everything, and can do whatever they want, and they can fire you at will. And like, I wanted people to be able to go to companies where they found purpose, and they found something beyond just adding zeros to the bottom line for the company. Like, what is the company giving them? So yeah, that would be it in a nutshell, just to create awesome jobs for people, kind of reinvent capitalism.
I love that. So how do you translate this life purpose or your mission into actionable steps and milestones that you want to achieve? For instance, do you have any personal and business goals that you've set, say, for the next 12 months or so?
Yeah, I mean, at it's like, which hat do I put on? So at work at Ad Victoriam, my goal is definitely right now it's to help us improve. We just recertified as B-corp, and I have a spreadsheet that's our roadmap to 90. So what improvements in the assessment can we make before our next recertification, where our score can go? Because you need 80 to certify, and we were at 81.5. And granted, we had grown like 4x from a people percent. No, wait, 6x. Sorry, we were at 20 when we certified. We were at like 120 when we recertified. We're over 130 now. So how do we keep continuing to scale, but keeping these things and also improving our score? And then with the class, honestly, am I teaching? And let's go to the nonprofit Be Local Georgia. It's really just growing the numbers in Georgia. It's how can I scream this from the mountaintops of what B Corps are and what they mean and why companies should certify, and helping them understand the value. And I'll use the term that nobody wants to use in the B Corp world or the purpose-driven world, ROI, on doing the right thing and doing the right thing intentionally but from a marketing, bundling what you're doing and your good together standpoint, from all these different angles of like, this is also really good for business and helping business understand that. But as we can grow that community, now I create a whole community of people that will be doing business together, can be referring people, can be working with each other, can be opening doors for each other. And I think it is people like our duty, people like me, it's my duty to make this successful, because I think there are still like the Milton Friedman economists of the world, the freshwater economists, as we call them over here, that believe in capitalism without regulation. and they're waiting for us to fail. So to me, that is a big part of my drive too, is creating a bigger community, and beyond Georgia, even the southeastern United States, where it is still more conservative. How do we create this community of everybody that's supporting each other so that we can all be successful and we can prove that this works? And then with my students, really, it's just teaching them. I understand that a lot of them won't go to a B Corp. We've been running these projects out of the University of Georgia for 4 years. I guess if you go back to mine, 6 years. And out of all those projects we run, probably 2025, 3 of us work for B Corps. Okay. So I like to think of it as I'm training them to go out to a company who might not be a traditional, like CSR focused, purpose driven, mission driven. It's an MBA program. They're going to go to Coca-Cola and Home Depot and Delta Airlines. They're going to go to these big Fortune 500 companies. But if I'm giving them this tool set and giving them this knowledge, they can then go inside those companies and drive change there, which, I'm not a cancel person, where if those companies, they're trying, if they're not perfect yet, that's okay. But hopefully my students are getting in and being an agent for change and continued improvements when they get there, so they can still find that purpose and find that value in what they do. And they might be a revenue person at Delta Airlines, but they can also focus on, like, what's our CSR program doing? Can I join a subcommittee? Can I join a task force? I have this knowledge. I have these skills that I picked up. So hopefully that I'm training that next generation of passionate thought leaders and change makers.
Yeah, and who knows, they might become founders themselves and be those leaders, because it sounds like you're teaching some very important leadership qualities there and leadership skills. So I hope this is going to be the next generation of leaders.
So yeah, that's my hope as well. And again, it's one of the neat parts about, like, going through that B Corp assessment, is there's a lot of foundational business building parts that I think even if you didn't know anything about what to do next, I just went through this route trying to get an LLC and filing all the paperwork and doing all the things and the legal stuff. And there's a lot in here that gives you the toolkit to be like, okay, so this is this is the handbook, and these are the policies I need, and this is how we're going to do things, and this is how we're going to operate, and this is going to be our environmental, controls and metrics. So I think when a lot of them probably will go on to social entrepreneurship, and I think hopefully my hope is that I've given them, and the assessment has given them, an idea of what to keep front of mind as they build a business.
I'm sure you've prepared them well. Sounds like you have. So, but when you think about all those different goals, what do you find most challenging and why?
I'm like the bags under my eyes. Honestly, it's capacity, a lot of it, and as the community grows, I will get more people that can take some of this work off my plate. But right now, a lot of it is there's a thing called social burnout that's probably worth talking about too, for social entrepreneurs and people in the nonprofit space, people like me, where you want to change the world and you want to do everything. So I've had to, the same Christina that I'd mentioned earlier, she worked with me this year. It's probably some of the best money I ever spent on business coaching, but she worked with me on saying no. And I know before we started this, I was telling you about a phone call I was just on where I kind of had to say no to something that's kind of interest to me, but I don't have the time right now. And I have to look at what are the priorities for all of the organizations I'm involved with. What's the most important, not just my own personal priorities, but what's the most important for the long-term growth of this community? And then where does that fit? And then if I don't have the time for it, it almost becomes like in your head, it's like this weird, like whiteboard Rain Man math equation that you're like, okay, no, I have to learn to say no, because that is the biggest limitation. I think it's just time.
Yeah.
And getting that to a place where the organization, Be Local Georgia, and the community of B Corps and this whole ecosystem is kind of self-sufficient, and I can plug and play, and hopefully in 3 or 4 years, I step down as chair of the nonprofit and let somebody else take it over. So yeah, that's it. Time.
I can totally understand that, because that's something that I see a lot, especially with those driven and ambitious entrepreneurs, because burnout is a real thing. And it's really important to talk about that, because once you go down that slippery slope, it's very hard to recover from that. I've experienced this myself, and I think we have to be really aware of the danger there and to take proactive steps to prevent that from happening. So this is something that I do with my clients as well, because it's really important that we guard not only our time, but also our energy. Because sometimes, especially if you have this mission to change the world, you have this like this big thing that drives you, it also can, suck out your energy, because you give your energy to so many people. And at the end of the day, there's nothing left for you, and you feel completely drained and burned out. And that's what we want to avoid. So what do you do when you come up against some of those challenges or roadblocks? How do you deal with them? Do you have any specific techniques or strategies that you find really helpful?
I have learned, and I actually got this advice about 3 weeks ago, listening to of all things, it was a talk show about American football, and they had an old coach on who's retired now. And they said, how do you do work-life balance? And so I'm adopting this philosophy now: is life is full of sprints. So recognize when you're coming out of a sprint and allow yourself time to recover. Like if you were sprinting across, the yard or the football field right now, like when you get to the end, you put your hands up and you breathe through your nose and out through your mouth and you recover. And I think a lot of us just tend to just turn around and start sprinting again. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I'm like lying on the ground, gasping for air. So that's been the one thing I've tried to adopt lately is like we had a big event last Thursday, and I came out of it and I went ahead and blocked most of my Friday. I have to teach my class in the afternoon, but I blocked most of my Friday off so that Friday morning I didn't feel like I didn't have to jump on and record a podcast or be on back-to-back calls. Like I was like, you know what? I don't have a call till 11 a.m. on Friday. So I allowed myself time to like sleep in, get up, enjoy the day, relax. So I'm trying to do a better job of that. And then from the time issue, I'm working on delegating more of my work, especially with Be Local Georgia, of like, what else can I delegate to, my board. I have a board, and I joke that I don't ask them to do a lot, but that's not really a healthy thing. I need to be delegating. And it's tough when you start an organization, and I mean, any entrepreneur knows this, like when you start an organization, you have your arms around it and it's your baby, and it's hard to give up creative control. It's hard to give up like ownership of an event, because you know the formula and it needs to be perfect, but it's also not, and I joke with our CEO all the time about this, it's not scalable.
No.
Like, even this year I've watched him and I've learned from him, because this year, as we got up towards the end of last year, around 80, 90 employees, we stayed pretty steady last year. But as we got up to that number, I remember the old days when Jeff, he would be involved in every decision. And like, when we got to like, we're a consulting company, we do Salesforce consulting. When we get to, a project was 80% done, he wanted the list. He wanted to know what projects were at 80% and da-da-da. He doesn't want to know that anymore. He needs to know if it's on fire. But other than that, there's somebody else that hands. So I've watched him slowly give things up. Mm-hmm. And then also watched him say like, okay, this person that used to report to me, report to our COO now. And this person sales report to a CRO now. So he has the executives reporting to him, and he's done a good job of breaking away and allowing himself to focus on what's important. And even this year he gave up, he was CEO and president, and then we promoted the co-founder to president. He's now just the CEO. So I've gotten to learn from a really good mentor and boss in how to do that. And now I just need to put it into action.
Right. That can be the toughest thing, letting go of control and trusting someone else to do the job at least as good as you would do it. Because most of us are perfectionists, right? We want to get the job done, but we want to get it done perfectly. And we often don't trust others to have the same high standards. So we like to do everything ourselves, and this really limits our capacity and what we can do. So this is a very important thing to learn. And in this context, how important is it for you to become the best possible version of yourself? Or how does this self-development journey, what does it look like for you?
Well, as a kid in America, I collected baseball cards. So I'm always make the joke that I collect mentors, like baseball cards. That I have as many mentors as I possibly could. I guess in Germany you get the little panini,
Yeah, the
the
football.
little like Fußball VM
Yeah.
stickers. So but yeah, like I think that's an important part to me. It's just that finding good mentors, finding people that can ground you, finding people that aren't afraid to take a, that not aren't afraid, but that are willing to take a phone call with you. Like, I mean, there's been times where I've burned out, and um, Jared down in Florida has been a great resource, who owns, he owns two B-corps, and he's an investor in a third, and he started the B local down in Florida. Like he's me, he's what I want to be in 10 years. He's about 10 years older than me. He's like, that's what I want to be when I grow up. But having those people that you can emulate, and that you see, that behind the scenes now, just from experience, that their life is probably like this, at least their professional life, but they manage to stay like just right in the middle. And I had the same conversation with a student last week, and she was kind of a little bit like overwhelmed by everything, and wanting to change the world. And I told her, I said, like, as you do this, one of the things I've learned is I can control what I can control. And anything else out of my control, I can work to influence it. But if I go crazy over whatever that outcome is, but I have no control over it, like, I'm going to go crazy. So controlling everything that I have my hands on to the best of my ability. And sometimes you have to let go a little bit of the things that are out of your control, and just know, like, or push those, like, say, hey, that's something on my 5-year plan that, like, I want to figure out a way to have influence over that thing, but right now I don't. And that has to be okay, because otherwise you're I don't know, your brain will never shut off. You have to be able to kind of be able to do the best you can and be okay with that. So I don't know, it's a continuous journey, and but it's a really fun journey. Like, I joke that I don't really, they say if you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life. And I mean, I have a lot of obligations, but also then I would say my other piece of advice is, like, if you're not really enjoying, I mean, there's those necessary things that you have to do, like, a spreadsheet, or, tracking your expenses, or, like, there are those things you have to do that most people don't like, especially if you're a creative and you're like, go play with a spreadsheet. But, getting rid of as many of the things that you don't enjoy doing, whether it's a project or a new venture, like, if it's not bringing you joy and it's not really part of where you see your organization going, like, it's okay to say no. And it's okay to kind of start something and then go, you know what, we're not going to do this, and kind of cut ties, and kind of move the ship and go a different direction. So
Great tips. And I totally agree. And I mean, to me, as a mindset coach, or I'm slightly biased here, so, but to me, becoming the best possible version of yourself really means to become more and more self-aware. The more we understand what really drives us and why we always react in a certain way in a specific situation, the more we are able to understand that, the more we are able to take a step back, to switch off that autopilot and to respond rather than react in a given situation. And to me, becoming this best possible version of yourself is really about letting go of old fears and limiting beliefs. It's about healing past trauma that's still holding you back. It's about accepting yourself fully so that you can show up as your authentic self without having to pretend to be someone you're not, or without having to say yes to please everyone in your community or your family or in your circle of influence. So that's what I help my clients with too. It's kind of like peeling an onion and getting rid of all those maladaptive protective layers that kind of suffocate your true self underneath. Now,
it's self-awareness too. Like, I wrote a blog. I haven't done anything with it yet, but it's called, I titled it, "Is Anybody Taking Notes?" And basically it's my own, I mean, I'm not there yet, but it's my journey to self-awareness, and the importance of taking, like, Myers-Briggs and predictive index and the DISC, and, of, like, understanding what you're good at. I noticed this morning that we were walking the dogs, my wife and I were walking the dogs, and I was just cranky. And then I started to think about, like, I know why this is, because I have to get on a call later this morning, and I'm going to have to say no. And I'm going to have a difficult conversation. I'm going to have to be brutally honest and candid. And those are all things that are out of my comfort zone. But knowing that, it was like, okay, I know where this anxiety is coming from. And I wasn't like snapping at her. I was just trying to stay very grounded. I know why I'm in a bad mood right now. And I can even tell her like, hey, here's what's going on inside me right now. And so I'm very anxious and I'm very uneasy, and it'll be done by 9:30. So we're good. But trying to understand what makes you, and even the detail thing for me, like, is anybody taking notes? I'm not good at it and I don't enjoy doing it. So when I can, that's something I should be delegating. I think that mental awareness piece that you just touched on is for long-term entrepreneurial success. I mean, even just professional success, I think it is probably the most valuable skill you can pick up.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I love the story you shared, because it shows how easily you can misplace your anger or your anxieties and then snap at your husband, snap at your kids, or, just take a conflict to a totally different area of your life. And then it can just snowball into something very ugly, very fast. Now, let's talk about your work. So for everyone who's listening and maybe isn't familiar with the term, can you explain what the B Corp is and why you think that the B Corp movement is so important?
Yes. So I describe B Corps as the gold standard of corporate social responsibility. So it is the only outside certified accreditation for your business as far as all your stakeholders. So it's to a business what LEED is to a building, or what certified organic is to milk. It is, how do you there's 5 sections of this assessment that you have to take. The first section is corporate governance. So how transparent are you? What do you share internally? What do you share externally? What's in your annual impact report? What's your board of directors look like? Those types of questions. The second section is around workers. So what's your pay multiplier from highest paid to lowest paid? Who's making a living wage? Who's making a family living wage? What sort of benefits do you offer? What sort of benefits do you offer if you have part-time employees? So those types of questions of how you're treating those stakeholders. Then moving on, it's community. So how much is your team, volunteering in the community? Do you offer volunteer time off, paid volunteer time off? Do you do pro bono work, provide pro bono services for nonprofits? What percentage of your revenue is going into these things? But also that forces, all these things start forcing you. And community also has all the diversity, equity, inclusion questions. So as you go through it, you start going like, oh, we've always cared about gender equality. And then you run your own numbers and you go like, oh, maybe we don't care as much as we, it opens your eyes to, or yeah, we give back to the community. And then you see like, how many hours did we actually volunteer last year? And you're like, apparently we don't really care about that. Like you start to see things where you're like, we could do a better job here. So after community, you go through the environmental section, which is, scopes 1, 2, and 3, greenhouse gas emissions, supply chain, supplier screening. What kind of supplier screening are you doing? Do you hold your suppliers to a code of conduct? And honestly, you don't have to do all these things. You have to get to 80 and there's 200 possible points. But again, you start gamifying it and you want to get a higher score. And then the last section is customers. So, do you have customer guarantees or satisfaction guarantees? Do you disclose, especially in the States where we don't have GDPR, do you disclose what you're doing with their data? Is that public? Is that available on your website, that what you're using cookies for and this and that? So it really, when you get to the end of it, it's just a really good, it's a great exercise, whether you want to certify or not. It's a free tool, beimpactassessment.net. You just go and you can sign up and take it, and nobody spams you. Nobody's doing it's just, you can go through that and quantify your business. And I'm a firm believer in, you can't improve what you're not, if you don't know your current state, how do you improve? If you want a, an equal, from a gender equity standpoint, if you want 50% women and 50% men, how do you get there if you don't know where you're at right now?
True.
So, and for us, that was one of the ones that was an eye opener for us. Is we're IT company, and IT traditionally has been white men, and it's always been that way. And so when we started this process, we were 75% white men. I literally would put it I was like, white dudes. That's what I call it, white dudes, 75% white dudes. And so it was like, okay. And then we started recruiting out of universities, and it was like, that first go around, we didn't get any women applicants. We got 8 out of 55 resumes. And I'm like, okay, what do we need to do? So it was like, take a step back. Okay, what does our job description say? Okay, let's play with that a little bit. Okay, who did we send to the job fair? 2 guys that, well, me and another guy that looks like me. I'm like, well, okay, I'm starting to see a trend here is why we're not getting these. So thinking more strategic, like because I had a goal, well, and honestly, my goal wasn't even quantifiable at the beginning. It was just to be less than 75% white guys. So as, especially in the South, like it's a very diverse, like part of the country that we're in. Atlanta has always been called the city too busy to hate, like, but it's a very diverse city. So because I had that goal, it was like, okay, how do we start getting female applicants? And then from female applicants, how do we start getting people of color to apply to these jobs? Where are we recruiting? So we were able to develop a strategy around it. And in 4 years now, we're like 48% white guys. And we're up to 10% people, well, 10% Black employees, and then another like 7% Hispanic, another 12% Asian. So we have, I think, 4 or 5 Indian Americans. So we started to grow this team now that's starting to like look like society, but it took a lot of intention. And that intention all comes back to the fact that when we took this assessment, we had to quantify things. But as we've scaled now, it's all these pieces are in place. All these KPIs now, since we first certified 4 years ago, are a 1% of revenue get in volunteer time, 1% of revenue in pro bono time. So as we grow, like every quarter, I'm sitting there, I just did it this week and I'm crunching our numbers. Where are we at on volunteer hours? Where are we at? What does our employee makeup look like right now from a diversity standpoint? It's something that I report back to our CEO on, and every quarter I'm showing him the numbers, and at the end of the year we're seeing where we're at, and as we build out strategy for the next year, I'm saying here's where we either fell short or what we could do additionally. And so it's made us the company, or it's kept us the company we want. I guess maybe it helped us become more of the company we wanted to be, but since then it's kept us the company we wanted to be, true to our values, true to what we believe in as far as community involvement and diversity, equity, inclusion, and corporate governance. It's kept us true because we know that we're doing these things. And with B Corp, you have to recertify every 3 years. So you can't just like get the certification and start pouring waste into the river again. You have to stay focused.
This sounds like an amazing framework because of this huge self-awareness piece that it brings to the table, and also because it really helps businesses to align their values and priorities with the business culture they're building. Now, this is probably closely linked to what you just said, but maybe you can elaborate a little bit on why aligning your brand and your company culture matters so much.
What a question. Love that question. We literally did an event earlier this year. I called it the brand sandwich. I think, first of all, the B Corp, that getting the certification bundles all of this so well from a marketing, culture, brand standpoint, that it's able to take all the things that you're probably already doing a good bit of and then telling a really good story. But we've gone through this, and I try to do this exercise a couple of times a year. Our survey is going out today to our employees of understanding like what is our, and I'll go to our executives first. What is the culture? How would you describe it? What do you think our employees would say? What are you afraid our employees would say? And what do you want it to look like? Like if you had to define our ideal culture, what does it look like? And then I'd go to the employees with the survey and I say, okay, give me 4 to 5 adjectives on our culture. Give me 4 to 5 things you'd fix. Give me 4 to 5 things you would improve on. And I'm starting to figure out what they value, what they don't like, what they would improve. And I start to get a picture of like, okay, here's what we want to be. And here's what our employees are perceiving, which is, I call that reality. And then how do we go from here? And then slowly kind of at least close that gap and get those 2 things closer. Because the first people that will call you out, especially if you're I don't know if we're considered small or medium, we're at 130 something employees now. The first people that will call you out, if you're a big company, like whatever, Keurig or Volkswagen a couple of years ago, like it's the consumers that will call you out. But if you're a smaller company, like most people, unless you've done business with us, you don't know who Ad Victoriam Solutions is, but our employees they know. And if we're sitting here going out and telling externally, like what a great place to work, best place ever, work-life balance, best benefits in the industry, and they're over here living a different experience, they're going to move from happy to unhappy to resentful very quickly. And honestly, there's no way to save them then. If you're doing these exercises continuously, you build a culture of transparency that I think empowers them to speak up, but it also gets you out in front of, most employees don't want to speak up, and they won't. That you're going to hear that they're unhappy when they give you their notice and tell you that they found another job. So I think that's the most important part is the retention piece of that exercise. And then also fine tuning, like what is it that makes people work here? I think I have that question on here on the survey. I added it this year of like, hey, if you've been here for more than a year, why? I don't mean it in a bad way. Just why are you still, what's keeping you here? What do you value so much? Because when we're recruiting employees, we should be telling that story. Oh, and then I think from a branding standpoint, it just gives you more authentic messaging. It gives you more authentic messaging for branding. We're working with both HR and recruiting to also talking about the company in a way that shines a light on it from a business development standpoint. People want to do business with people they like and with companies they value. Even on the B2B side, that decision maker is going to look at, is it cost effective? Do they deliver on time? And and then those other things, but happy people help you deliver on time, and they deliver really good, results. So that to me is the big piece, because your people will call you out, especially with Gen Z. Gen Z doesn't hold back. They don't hold back punches, man. They will tell you how it is. And I would say they've empowered us millennials. I'm 38, and so I'm an old millennial, but I'm still a millennial. And they've empowered us, I think, to speak up. I think we were afraid to early on in our careers because we had our parents in our ear kind of telling us to you do your thing and you work hard, you keep your head down, you get promoted. And I think Gen Z came in and was like, no. And we're like, yeah, they're right. So yeah, Gen Z is changed. And I think a lot of the good CEOs have caught on. You mentioned earlier, bringing your authentic self to work. You think and especially last year, and I know it went all the way because my buddy was marching in Stuttgart last year of the George Floyd, when he got murdered, that flipped a lot of things on its head. And it was like, we're going to have to talk about these things, and we're going to talk about them at work as well. Yeah. And we demanded that our companies take a stand, and we demanded that our companies stand up for diversity, equity, inclusion, and stand up for science and all these things that these next generations are firmly on the side of, and kind of those things that you didn't used to talk about at work, like even LGBTQ, like you didn't, that's your personal life. We don't need to know about it. And now it's like, no, we had an employee that had a big rainbow flag on her desk, and it's like, but we just kind of go cool. And I think 10 years ago, though, you'd be like, hey, that's not appropriate for the workplace. And now everybody, I think it's just kind of accepted that people do bring their whole self to work. So sorry, long answer, but.
No, that's a great answer. Now, who should certify their business as a B Corp? I mean, we've talked about why, but who should do it?
Everybody.
No, everybody. But what about the solopreneur? I mean, a single person.
So it's funny because I do have 2 out of my 17 or 18 in Georgia are solopreneurs.
Oh, nice.
I think there is a business development play in there somewhere for the solopreneur, but I would say my ideal, I used to do sales. So what's my customer persona, my ideal customer persona? I'm thinking is probably somebody along the lines of my CEO who's got, 8, 9 employees starting the process, but he sees this, I want to scale it. I don't know how big we're going to scale. I mean, we've, again, 130 plus, I think probably towards the end. And I don't know how big, if we want to get to 200 next year. Cause that is, talk about burnout. That is scaling businesses. Whew. I've been here for 5 years and there's been some bumpy moments. But I think that for that type of entrepreneur, it's absolutely the move, because you're locked into everything you want to do. You're going to scale with your purpose. You're going to scale true to your values. You're going to do it the right way. But I mean, I also know B Corps that have 12 to 15 employees, and originally, it's a friend of mine. He's like, yeah, we got up to 25 employees. And he goes, that was the worst year of my life. And he goes, so I got it back down to 12. We're all happy. We all make good money. He goes, we do good work, and that's where I'm not getting any bigger than that. I'm happy there, and that's where we're going to stay. And I was like, very interesting, because he had those ambitions, and then he got into it and went, no. So I think that's, and I'm honestly, now you're also starting to see like big multinational companies doing it. So just because I talk about that early stage kind of entrepreneur wanting to scale, doing it, I think there's something to be said for some of these bigger companies doing it, because it breaks through the greenwashing. Right. Because every company says they do good now. Every company champions diversity. Every company champions the environment. And I saw like the UK is cracking down on greenwashing and advertising. Like they came out with some new rules this week. And I think it's a really good way to break through that clutter, because at the end of the day, you can go scoreboard, and point to the scoreboard and say, that's our score. What's yours? And I think that's probably the most the biggest value for most companies nowadays, because again, everybody's doing it. So that's my ideal customer persona, but I would say for everybody to look at it and be able to at least then start to think about what does matter. How do I tell that story externally, internally, of here are the improvements we're making, here's our number, our current number, and being able to, again, bring it all together with that B Corp logo. So I always say everybody, because I'm, selfish, but
yeah, I mean, everybody, or at least the business owner who are starting to build a team, starting to scale and grow. So that's the idea.
Yeah. And I mean, the other part too is a lot of entrepreneurship. Nobody likes to talk about this, but part of starting a business is scaling it, starting it, scaling it, and eventually, what does my exit strategy look like? Like as a CEO, like, I mean, I look at our CEO, sometimes I joke, I was like, he reminds me of Barack Obama. And like, when I met him in like 2008, it was like Barack Obama. And now, like, then you see like at 2016, when he's leaving the White House, and you're like, ooh, he got old. So I joke sometimes with our CEO where I'm like, I can see that, like, especially after last year, like that had to have taken a toll mentally, physically, emotionally. And it's like, so at what point, is there, for a lot of entrepreneurs, that kind of like, I'm ready to retire, I did my thing, but B Corp, because there's the legal requirement to, like in the US, you have to amend your articles of incorporation to protect stakeholders. So what point is, and that's really where this whole movement started, was somebody sold their company. The guys who started B Lab, they sold their company and they didn't have any of this in there. And the venture capital firm came in and just gutted it and undid a bunch of their policies, pay reductions, pay cuts. And they watched in horror as their baby basically became like this monster, evil capitalist, return on profit over everything, or return on investment over everything. So that's where it started. So that's another piece that I think gets overlooked in this argument, is like, it's also really nice when you do walk away that your baby is still your baby. You're just now, on vacation permanently. So, but your people that you brought in are still going to be taken care of, and the company's still going to run well and run with the same values you instilled in it.
Right. So you protect your vision if you want.
Yep.
Now, besides getting this their business certified, what do you think are maybe the 3 most important things good leaders can do to create this authentic, inclusive, and engaging company culture?
Lead from the top. Be transparent when you make decisions. Solicit feedback. Before you make a decision, ask people, hey, what do you think? It doesn't mean you always have to take the feedback. People like to be heard. I think a lot of leaders make that mistake if they just tell people, hey, here's what we decided and here's what we're doing. And then it blows up in their face and they're like, what happened? I'm like, well, you didn't ask anybody. Nobody liked the idea. Like, if you would have done a little bit of digging, you would have realized that, like, this is not a good, maybe financially it was good, or maybe from this regard it was good. But you've also then just completely torpedoed your culture of transparency. So I think that's really important, is to start from the top, explain why you did things, explain the decision, even trust your people, trust, again, going back to Gen Z and millennials, trust that they'll understand the business rationale behind why you're doing what you're doing. I think a lot of times it's like, you don't need to know, and that erodes all kinds of trust. It's like, well, we just made a decision, and you know what? You're not in the know. You don't need to know. and they want to know, and they're smart enough to understand, okay, oh, that's why we made that decision. I think of old jobs where it's like, I didn't realize until I was getting my MBA, like, oh, that's why they did that. So that I think is a big one, is lead from the top. I think being authentic in some of that is very, very important too. I think a lot of companies want to be transparent, but then they don't really want feedback. They don't do anything with feedback. So, you leading and actually being transparent yourself and with your executive team going down, but then also fostering it coming up as well, and being a two-way street and allowing for feedback and allowing for people to speak up. We've had some really good examples at our company where, and I talk about, I onboard all of our employees and I tell them these stories of like these people calling me out because, we finally fixed a lot of the gender application problems we were having. And then when we had interviews, and I had 11 men and 1 woman doing the interviews that day, I got called out by 3 of our women. But I still to this day thank them, because it was an unconscious bias. I didn't plan it. I was looking at who's in the office that day and who could be there and whose schedule was free. But I didn't really try hard enough. I didn't think about that first and foremost and then make it work. We've had people just like day one say, hey, why do y'all, that was weird. Why would you do it that way? And then, coming with a solution, but they see over time, we've implemented these ideas and we've taken that feedback, and we haven't been like, oh, here go these women complaining again. I remember showing my CEO that email when I got it, and he was like, well, they're not wrong. And we went up to his office and we called him, and we got on a call with all 3 of them. And we had a whole conversation, and we owned it. And from then on, we've flown all kinds of different people in for those interview days. And I think to that, like, talk about empowering your employees to speak up. They sent an email that they were probably terrified to hit send on, and they got a call from the CEO and myself saying, you're right, we're wrong, we own it, and let's fix it. And will you be a part of the solution with us? And they went, yeah. So I think that's number 2. And then number 3 for building a culture of authenticity, I think delivering on promises, delivering on what you said, being good to your word. And it's hard to tell people how to do that. I think people just know it when they see it, that somebody's authentic. And again, maybe and if they screw up, they own it. They don't like kick and scream and go and throw a tantrum like, hey, I was wrong, you're right, and I did tell you I was going to do that, and I didn't get it to you. I think that piece is important. And then one other one I'll throw in, because that was one of the most brilliant pieces of advice I've ever gotten. It was on a webinar. Thanks, COVID, for creating a bunch of webinars for us to attend. It was a professor from Emory talking about the cheapest form of transparent or of trust building from an executive or a leader is communication and quickness. So if you get an email, if you don't have time to get by the end of the day, okay. And our CEO is great at this. A day never goes by where he doesn't boom, he answers my Slack or my email. Even if it's hey, didn't have time to digest this today. Let me noodle on it. Let me sleep on it, or let me read it in the morning. I'll get you an answer by the end of the week. I feel very heard.
Yeah,
those are the types of things. I think a lot of people don't get to it, so they don't say anything. And for the more extroverted people, myself included, I take that as that was a stupid idea. That was dumb. Why did I email them? You internalize their lack of response when they didn't mean it that way. But what they don't realize is not responding, not saying anything, or letting it get buried in your inbox where you completely forget about it means next time I have an idea, I'm not going to send it to you. Right. So making sure that you're communicating well and acknowledging, even if you don't have time to get to it that week, just being honest and saying, hey, I might not get to this till next week. But I think that goes the cheapest form of currency is what he called it in building trust. And that's it in a nutshell.
Great tips. Thank you so much for sharing. Now, where can our listeners find you online if they want to know more about you or the work that you do?
So you can find us at advic.com. That's and we're on LinkedIn, and it's ADVIC. I'll zoom in. We used to have the full Ad Victoriam Solutions.com. We still own it, but people misspell Victoriam anyway. So advic.com. And then we're on LinkedIn as Ad Victoriam Solutions. And I would say those are probably our 2 best ones for the business. And then I'm on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/Nathan A. Stuck. And then you'll see a bearded picture. There's not many Nathan Stucks in the world. And then Be Local Georgia is on LinkedIn as well. And that's the only social that I use for Be Local Georgia. So yeah, any of those, or just connect with me and I'll send you the links to all of them. I'm sure they'll be in the show notes, but yeah, I'd love to engage. Always happy against social burnout, but I'm always happy to ask questions, jump on calls, help in any way I can, as long as I have the capacity to do so.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Nathan, for all those brilliant tips and insights. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Awesome. Thanks, Claudia. Appreciate it.
So take care and talk to you soon. Bye.
Yep.
Thank you so much for listening to the Wired for Success podcast. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, please take a sec to rate and review my show. It would mean the world to me because you'd help me reach more entrepreneurs like yourself who would love this show. If you'd like to learn more about creating a widely successful business without sacrificing your health, relationships, or sanity, make sure to stick around and subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. And why don't you help me spread the word and share this show with your friends? I'd really appreciate it, and I'm sure your friends will too. Want to continue this conversation, build real relationships, and join a community of like-minded entrepreneurs? Come join my free Facebook community for visionary entrepreneurs. I would love to see you there. In the meantime, if you haven't done so already, grab my free brain priming audio file for entrepreneurs and start priming your brain for success in less than 5 minutes each morning. Curious? You can learn more about how this works and download the audio file at www.wiredforsuccess.solutions. Until next time, bye!